Shalom Aleichem and welcome to Online Smicha. We all know what the Gemara says. 40 days even before the birth of a child, a baskal comes out and says, Bas Pliny le Pliny, that this daughter is eventually going to get married, going to get engaged and married to this individual. Bas Pliny le Pliny, and there's loads of drush and agada explaining why Bas Pliny le Pliny, as you'll see in the Sifrei Drush v'Agada. This is not a contradiction, obviously, to the fact that when the time comes and there is a chassan and there is a kala, a bacher and a bachura who are looking to get married, so there's a whole shidduch process. There's a whole process of how to choose who's the right one, who is sugapast or bashert, who is the basherta. Now in Shulchan Aruch, it gives you an elimination process of who you should not look for. Who you should not look for either because of the yichus level or health level or pashit, practically these two types of people will not get along. So I'm going to touch upon some of them as it's mentioned in Shulchan Aruch. In the Shulchan Aruch it says that the simanim of a yidin are by shonim, rachmanim, and goyim lechasonim. Bashful, compassionate, and goyim lechasad, always doing kind acts. If you see somebody that's lacking in one of those midas, it's actually a machlekes if he has to be lacking in all three, or he's an achzar, a cruel person, or Rahman al-Islam, it's a family, Mizgare Zubazu, it's any fight in town, this family is involved, there's issues, and should stay away. Now that's a problem, could be, it's stamped from the background of a yichus that's questionable, that's not so Jewish. And besides for that, there's also that for two people, a husband and a wife, to get along, they have to be on the same page. And a person who's so cruel and so has no compassion, it's going to be hard to get along together. So it leads to the next point. If you are looking for somebody who thinks like you and acts like you and has the same hashkafis like you, there's actually a statement that's brought in the Medrash. In actually Yalkut Shemaini. In Yalkut Shemaini it says, Ashrei Adam She'ishtoi Me'iroi, praises the person that his wife is from his city. Because when you grow up in the same city, you think alike, you know, your thought process are basically the same. Obviously, the other things still have to be looked into. But if you're worried about the companionship, if you are thinking about how they think and how they behave, but pashtus, if they grew up in the same surrounding, Iroi, then they're usually on the same page. It also says, obviously, that people who have Rahman al-Islam sicknesses in the family, and it's hereditary sicknesses, obviously for health reasons, you have to stay away from it. And that's a whole discussion in Halacha, what would be considered hereditary sickness, and how could you establish that it's a sure thing it's going to happen. But that's too many details and too many pratim. But there is a prat that we find that there are two sides to this halacha. Chazal say, "Shetzarich lehizdaveg b'mnei mishpacha ukroivim." Top of your list should try to be to get married, to get engaged, to marry your own relatives. And perhaps some go as far and say that this is, the Medrash Rabbi says, Hanoisei isha mikroi vaisov, somebody who marries a wife from his relatives, olav akosov oimer etzem me'atzamai. We know that the pasuk in Chumash Bereishis speaks about the mitzvah of marriage, of ruvu, and says etzem me'atzamai. So if it's your relative, then you're fulfilling that part of the mitzvah. So not only the Torah perspective, it's actually, some achreinim say it's beneficial because if you're the same family, you usually think alike, you usually have the same hashkafas, and that's why chances of failure, Rahman al-Islam, is much less. We find that the Torah says, Ki el artzi ve'el meiladati Telech, you should go back to my homeland. Avram tells to Eliezer, V'lakachta isha lebni, and over there you get a wife for my son. Because Artzi, Moiladati, is where there is more chance of success. However, at one point even, they say that it's part of Umibsarcha Altis Alam, that the first choice in fulfilling anything, any mitzvah, any good deed, should be within your own. Mibsarcha Altis Alam. What changed? That those Achronim that say that after the time of the Talmud, after the time of the Gemara, it was proven that marrying within your family is possibly a sakana. In the earlier times, where Pruvu was L'Shem Shemayim, somehow the L'Shem Shemayim overruled any chance of sakana. But today's days, where there is Yeridus Hadayrus, we're not that perfect anymore, so we have to be much more aware of the chance of a sakana. So it could be that this is a discussion that has to be brought up, because this will depend. If a doctor will come along and say that these two are not compatible, obviously, chash sakana you have to stay away from. So, to go back to the original point, that when a person is looking for a shidduch, he opens up the Shulchan Aruch and the Ezer, and it tells you what should be your first choice as success, begashmius, health, and beruchnius, Yerushalayim, and then following that list in the Shulchan Aruch, you'll have Dair Yishar Memverach, Kol to Asela. Shekoyach, and please join us again next week.